Good afternoon, good evening, good morning from wherever you are joining us. I'm delighted to introduce this next panels on how major events are contributing to environmental goals. I'm Nicoletta Piccolrovazzi, Technology and Sustainability Director for Dow Olympic and Sport Solutions. In my role, I'm working with major events to help them address their sustainability and technology needs with Dow's solutions. But this effort goes well beyond just product placement. At its heart, we want to combine the power of sport and science to deliver solutions with a positive impact. And that's also the topic of our panel, of course, today. In the 10 years that I have been involved in the sports sustainability industry, I have seen an evolution. I'm excited by this evolution. 10 years ago, probably sustainability was many times an afterthought. It was not integrated in the operations and in the planning phase. While today, in many instances, and it has become almost the standard, I would say, sustainability is very well integrated, and it is something that is started from the bid phase, from the design of a mega event. So without further ado, I would like to have our distinguished panelists join me here on the stage today, and would like to ask them to introduce themselves. May I ask you, Federico, to go first, please?
Thank you, Nicoletta. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone. My name is Federico Addiechi. I'm the head of sustainability and environment at FIFA, responsible, among others, for the sustainability strategies of our events, including the FIFA World Cup. And as you all know, the upcoming one is going to be in Qatar in 2022. So we'll have today the opportunity to touch upon a number of initiatives and explain a little bit of the work that we're doing in connection with the sustainability strategy for that event to address some of the questions that are coming out as part of this panel. So a pleasure to be with you and sharing as well with Georgina and Jacob this panel.
Thanks, Federico. Georgina, maybe you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you very much, Nicoletta. Very nice to share this panel with Federico and Jacob. So I'm Georgina Grenon. I'm Director of Sustainability and Environmental Excellence of Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games. It's a real pleasure to be here, as I said, and give some heads up on what we are preparing for Paris in 2024.
Thank you, Georgina. And Jacob?
Yep, thank you. Again, really honoured to be here and to share the panel with some very distinguished guests. So I'm Jacob, I'm Production Director for Coventry City of Culture, which is the UK City of Culture in 2021. My role is as Production Director, kind of making sure that the event kind of happens, looking after areas of production, technical, logistics, and sustainability is one of my key focuses, both in my role and also kind of personally in terms of trying to further a sustainable agenda in everywhere I work.
Thank you. So let's dive into this discussion. So when we talk about how events can influence environmental goals, we need to define first what are your environmental goals, what are the key areas of focus. So I would like in this first round of comments, I would like to explore the different dimensions of sustainability for your events. And I would like to start maybe with you, Georgina. What does sustainability mean for the Olympic Games Paris 2024? And what are your key areas of focus? And maybe some of them have even changed now, of course, with the pandemic.
Thanks for the question. You know, a huge event as the Olympic and Paralympic Games, it has to be exemplary at this stage. I mean, there's no choice, right? But it can and it must as well be an accelerator of the ecological transition. A friend just recently told me, well, you're lucky because in a sense you actually are a startup. You can behave as a startup, you can get things right and right from the start. So that's true, because we started very early with the very concept of the games, for them to be low carbon, for them to be fully aligned with the Paris Agreement. You know, we're the first game to be less than 50% carbon emissions than previous summer games, and fully carbon neutral by 2024. So starting with the concept, then defining clear objectives and a first set of solid frameworks that are guiding these defining decisions that we're making today. For example, our sustainable procurement strategy. It applies already to 100% of our purchases, and we are 3.5 years before the games. By operationalizing this strategy, we have produced the first set of guidelines on how to buy, how to prioritize the circular economy, for example, how to be low carbon, how to preserve the environment and biodiversity, how to act on resilience, but also how to look for social innovation to facilitate inclusion of all sorts of populations and to create value in our territories. So, these are all the different aspects that we are putting together. And as I said, one of the first key things is to set up how you purchase, because, in an event like ours, you start from nothing and you end in nothing. So you have to source everything that goes in between. So if you want to get it right, well, you have to get your sourcing strategy first.
You already mentioned their circular economy, even, so it's not anymore that you are purchasing things and then they just get used and then wasted, but you're already thinking also in terms of how to advance circularity through these events. Okay, I would like to turn maybe to you, Jacob. What does sustainability mean in the context of Coventry City of Culture? What are your areas of focus?
I think probably from our point of view, the way we are approaching sustainability is in a very holistic way. So really trying to focus on how, when we're talking about sustainability, we're not just talking about kind of the environmental and kind of green credentials. We're also thinking about how do we make sure things are financially successful, that we're socially responsible, as well as reducing our environmental footprint. So we are quite heavily looking in terms of the international standard on sustainable events, so the ISO 20121, and using that as a framework in terms of how does an organisation continue to run its activities in a commercially successful way whilst contributing towards a stronger and more just society. So absolutely understanding there's intersections between human rights and environmental sustainability. There's interactions between being more a more inclusive event, as well as which will all lead to kind of that wider agenda on being a more sustainable event, and ultimately lead into some of those kind of big questions like the sustainable development goals set by the UN around that agenda for people, planet, prosperity, peace and partnership. So we kind of see ourselves as a very, very small cog in that much larger picture, but we're really trying to be holistic in our view, and ultimately we incorporate absolutely things like sustainable procurement policies, but also into fair pay policies across the board, really. So it's really I suppose from our point of view is definitely kind of a strong, trying to have a strong moral compass, I guess, in how we approach this, and ultimately making sure that all of our actions and all our decisions are done for the well-being of not just people living in the world today, but also kind of a well-being of future generations as well.
Thanks. That struck me actually last time we talked, that this very view of society that you want to also through the event. Maybe it's also due to the fact that, of course, your footprint is a smaller footprint as an event in terms of carbon emissions, which is, of course, very different and for the Olympic Games or for FIFA World Cup. That's why, I mean, while also this major events have all the three pillars included, you have a really balanced view of how to bring these three pillars to life through your event. I would like to turn now to Federico to hear more about how FIFA World Cup defines sustainability. I believe you have a sustainability framework that you would like to share with us also, possibly.
Yeah, thank you, Nicoletta. For us, sustainability is simply how we do things. It is about striking a balance between the social, the economic, and the environmental dimensions of sustainability in all the decisions and in connection with our events. And because organizing an event like the FIFA World Cup is a complex endeavor, it requires, in first place, understanding of the reach of the event and how it impacts, both positively and negatively, people, planet, and economy. It requires as well the proper analysis of the local and the global context, the application of international sustainability standards that are also common in the private sector, and of course, in the end, the development of a clear and comprehensive sustainability strategy, which has as well clearly defined priorities. So put simply, the aim of a FIFA World Cup sustainability strategy is that of minimizing the negative impact and maximizing the positive impact that the event has on society, the economy, and the environment. Now, to answer the second part of your question, what are the key areas that we focus on? We start developing the sustainability strategy for a FIFA World Cup. The list of the possible areas that an event touches upon is huge. The event reach is so large that almost everything, and in the country of the next World Cup, Qatar, this is particularly true, almost everything could be linked to, affected by, or impact the FIFA World Cup. Therefore, a key step in the development process of that strategy is the materiality assessment, a process that helps us and enables us to focus on priority areas and address the highest risk. So, for Qatar 2022, the original list of topics we started with was more than 100. So prioritization is definitely mandatory in this case. And it is the materiality assessment that helps us in identify what are the top material issues that our strategy focuses on. And these are 20. So now perhaps I can show you in a slide, if we project it, please, what is the sustainability strategy framework for Qatar 2022, which lists all those material areas that are covered in the strategy. They go from workers' living and working conditions to greenhouse gas emissions, from accessibility to a local and regional value chain and business development, from sustainable procurement to air pollution. And of course, the process to come up with these 20 key material issues is validated permanently by stakeholder engagement, so that we can ensure that no relevant topic is forgotten or disregarded in this process. And to answer one of the questions you asked at the beginning, if this is the pandemic has had or is having an impact on our focus on the World Cup, there was no change at all in the focus of our strategy or sustainability strategy for the FIFA World Cup because of the pandemic. However, I understand very well that this is not just a health crisis, but also an economic one, and our sport has been definitely hard hit by it. So the risk in football, but also in every other sector of society, is that the economic crisis is used to further justify some resistance against socially or environmentally responsible decisions. And for all the sustainability professionals among us listening today, they will certainly agree with me that when I say that our role is usually that of fighting for the integration of sustainability organization-wide. And it's not an easy fight, despite the undeniable climate emergency, for example, that we're going through. And therefore, the crisis requires from all of us an increased effort to ensure that the social and environmental responsibilities are not forgotten or postponed in these challenging times. This is very important to say, despite the fact that there have not been any changes to the sustainability strategy for the World Cup. We need to remain vigilant and definitely strengthen our efforts in order to make sure that sustainability is not forgotten in this process.
Very clear. Yeah, this additional emphasis to make sure all areas are vigilantly observed and implemented. Okay, well, if I look at what I've heard from you, I can definitely see that there is major events offer opportunities to do much more than provide positive environmental impacts. They allow us also to address many other dimensions of sustainability. And when we look at the events, you already have integrated this sustainability thinking from the very beginning. Sometimes it even stretches beyond the event. You deliver results, of course, for the event, by the event, but also beyond. Jacob talked about future generations and how they wanted to impact future generations. So let's now talk about the ecosystem that needs to all work together in order to deliver a sustainable event. You need an ecosystem of suppliers, for instance. And so I would like to understand better from you, how are you, for example, incentivizing your supply chain to deliver more sustainable solutions? And maybe let's start with Jacob this time to understand, how do you incentivize your supply chain to deliver a sustainable Coventry Culture City event? And what are some specific examples of where you have worked with suppliers that you could mention?
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, from our point of view, it's we were very clear from the outset when talking to business groups and the chambers of commerce and the rest that sustainability is a key factor of working with us, and so to start, even long before we were kind of ready in terms of some of the contracts going out, making sure that people were aware that there's some key aspects that they need to be brushing up on before being able to work with us. What we've been through recently is a call out to join a preferred suppliers list, and in that we've obviously stipulated some of those requirements where we want to be seeing not just an environmental policy in terms of a document. We want to be seeing how that document is alive in that organisation and where it comes through. But what we've also been really keen on is looking at how we can work with local companies of any scale as well to see where they might not be at that point. They might not be that far ahead in terms of their thinking around sustainability, but how can we, over the next 2 years, work with them to improve their thinking and improve their operational standards around sustainability. So not just going with the people who are already thinking about it and already operating sustainably, really trying to influence the sector to come along and come on that journey and build their own networks which are kind of based around that. So we've developed our preferred suppliers list. We've got our green code, which is being developed in consultation with partners, which is kind of our a base set of principles and behaviours that we expect both our suppliers and our freelancers and all our kind of partner stakeholders to be abiding by as well, which is all moving towards that kind of same goal, really.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And let's turn now to Federico to hear how you influence your suppliers, particularly in the local economy, but maybe also across the region.
Well, it must be said, when you ask about incentives, the World Cup and being partner of a World Cup and working with the World Cup is already a big incentivizer of supply chains, partners, sponsors, commercial affiliates, contractual partners, and definitely that offers us a great opportunity as well to leverage our requirements and expectations and provide guidance to those partners and contractual affiliates. So when it comes to one of the things that we try to utilize in order for us to guarantee that we get the results that we expect are international standards in first place. So we try to, as much as possible, follow the guidance of global standards that we use, as, for example, ISO standards such as 2012-1 as a sustainable management system that we used to operate ourselves on our own events, but also expect from some of our partners and stakeholders. Greenhouse gas protocol for our carbon management, GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, when it comes to sustainability reporting, AA1000 when it comes to stakeholder engagement systems. We expect as well, and we apply international standards when it comes to sustainable building certifications such as LEED, BREEAM, GSAS, and other internationally recognized standards for certification of infrastructure and operations. And to give another example, when it comes to human rights, the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights for human rights due diligence of FIFA and of our own supply chain. So we have also, in addition to that, obviously developed a number of internal events-related policies and standards, codes, and procedures, which also help us to ensure that our commercial affiliates and those contractual partners and supply chains work according to our high expectations. And among those internal standards, we also have a sustainable sourcing code, very helpful when it comes to collaborating with the supply chains and stating our expectations and requirements to ensure that the event supply chains operate respecting human and labor rights, minimizing negative impact of products and services on the environment, and promoting the development of the local and regional economies.
Great, really a very comprehensive list there. And maybe let's turn to Georgina to understand how, I mean, Paris is all about engagement, engagement also of the local community and also business ecosystem. How do you use the brand, the Paris brand, to help engage your value chain? And do you have any examples to share there in terms of results?
Yeah, well, actually, it's very important what you ask, because it's not only, in the value chain. If you think about it, where value is created, there's tremendous value that is created not only through our supply chain, but also through our sponsors, those who are helping us deliver these games in an exemplary way, and also of public entities, the local authorities of the host cities that are working with us every day in order to create value all around it. So in that sense, I'd like to highlight two aspects that were not mentioned before. So one is social economy. It was very important for us to create value for the social local economy. So very early on, we set up a dedicated platform, as a website, plus some dedicated support of an association that works together with the UNIS Center, who's the world leader in social business, so that we can support this social economy into getting closer to the games, contributing to the games, being part of the games, and getting access to our markets, because sometimes for this type of companies, it's more complicated to respond to our tenders, to be ready, to be at the right capacity, to be part of the games. So social economy is an important aspect. And the second one that I'd like to highlight is innovation. As I said, we're still 3.5 years away from the games. So, there's still a lot of things that we can work on, especially in helping some new solutions come up. We set for these games very high objectives. And in many cases, the solutions in order to deliver those objectives are not yet there. Either they're not there, or they're not up to the level, up to the scale that the games request. The Olympic and Paralympic Games is more than 40 international championships happening at the same time. So you need huge capacity to deliver that in such a short period of time. So we started working with the innovation ecosystem, clearly stating what the ambitions are, what are the sort of solutions we're looking for, and see what happens. And some solutions are starting to appear. And we hope to be testing some of them well in advance, so as to be able to deploy them in 2024.
Thanks a lot. So we have heard really some great examples of how these brands and these events can help engage not just the value chain, but the community, the whole business ecosystem at large, and how some of this collaboration can really push sustainability standards, but also innovation, as you just mentioned, Georgina. Now, I would like to understand how these events, as an additional aspect now, how these events can help create an overspill effect, if you want, to other sectors. How can you, do you see that you are starting to influence, for instance, the tourism sector, but it could be also other sectors? And so I would like to start this time maybe with you, Federico. How is FIFA World Cup influencing other industries and value chains in Qatar?
Well, it must be first said, and this is something that I always try to message that I always try to convey when it comes to influencing other sectors or going beyond our own responsibility. It's important to be said that for a sports organization or an event organizer, we should not forget that before thinking of influencing other sectors or contributing to other initiatives, local initiatives or campaigns, we need to look inwards. The big mistake that was done over many years in the past of sports event organizers was that we had campaigns, activities that we run as satellites, as initiatives that we were doing to show that there was a good PR effect on it, but without looking inwards. So we were helping others do their job, but without looking at what our issues are and how can we make sure that we respect the same things that we expect from others. So this is very important. So our first responsibility is that of ensuring that we ourselves operate sustainably, that our decisions and operations take social, economic, environmental aspects into consideration, that we do no harm, that we minimize our negative impact, and we can mitigate as well all inherent risks associated with our event. Once we have covered that part, and it's not an easy task, but once you have covered that part of your own responsibility, is there where the opportunities come. And how can we use the influence of our sport or our event to go beyond our own responsibility and to further contribute to a positive legacy in the whole city, in the region, in the country, or globally. So for us, the FIFA World Cup in Qatar is a very interesting event from that point of view, because of the small size of the country and at the point at which the country finds itself in its national development plan, the World Cup has been and continues to be a strong positive influence in accelerating a number of processes. So, for example, unique labor laws were reformed in line with our expectations from the host country in terms of the way the World Cup is conducted and operated. The FIFA World Cup labor standards that are applied throughout all the construction sites of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar have become best practice, not just in the country, but across the region. We have, of course, our accessibility requirements when it comes to the infrastructure that is used for the World Cup. What are the accessibility requirements for and services that we provide in connection with our events, with the stadiums, with the infrastructure which is accessed by ticket holders. But what we have seen in Qatar is that those requirements and our expectations for the event enable the creation of what is called an accessibility forum, which goes beyond accessibility requirements for the event itself and has impacted accessibility across the country, across the public sector, in the field of entertainment, across museums, educations, universities, and further on. So we have been a catalyzer in that sense, or the World Cup has been a catalyzer in terms of making sure that high expectations we have in terms of accessibility are replicated and even brought further across the country in other sectors. And when it comes to the environmental aspects of the environmental field, renewable energy projects are being developed in Qatar. So we have currently a project which is a 700 megawatt solar energy plant, which is being built in Qatar, which is not going to just deliver clean energy for the World Cup, and to cover 10% of Qatar's future needs in terms of energy, but it's also generating through a system that has been created in Qatar and as the first mechanism in the Gulf region, carbon credits to offset additional emissions of the FIFA World Cup and beyond. So we're seeing, again, in the case of Qatar, and a very good example in terms of after we have taken or are taking responsibility for our own risks, for our own operations, for making sure that we are socially, economically, and environmentally responsible in connection with the event, that the event itself and the fact that the popularity of a game like football offers us a great opportunity to go beyond. And these are some of a few of the examples that we're seeing happening these days in Qatar, and we're definitely going to see many more of those in the coming 2 years.
Thank you. These are great examples indeed. I would like to turn to Georgina in terms of how is Paris 2024 not only setting standards for the Olympic Games, but also starting to influence other sectors, even other countries maybe. Do you have any examples that you could share on this?
Yes, sure. Well, actually, first of all, I'd like to say that I agree completely with what Federico was saying. You can only start influencing others once you have your house in order. So the first thing is to work on your own ways of delivering your event for them to be sustainable. But then with the innovative ways of making things, new methodologies, new approaches, you can start influencing, I think, quite early on. As I said, we still have a long way to go and a lot of things to prove, but already, we have set for ourselves the objective of being an accelerator of the ecological transition of sports. In that sense, I would say one key example is carbon. We are the first to be fully aligned with the Paris Agreement, but we also created a methodology to set for ourselves an objective of a number of tons not to be exceeded. So that means, we impose to ourselves a carbon budget. It's like a financial budget, in terms of money you should not overspend. Well, we have a number of tons we should not overspend. And this way of setting a target not to be overspent, to keep it over time, to, put carbon in every managerial decision across the board, creating a software to actually help us track our carbon emissions, to be consistent with our goals. This whole methodology of anticipating and avoiding and reducing carbon emissions before even talking about compensation, this whole thing, this whole methodology is helping us, help sports in realizing what their carbon impact is and how they could also address it moving forward. Some of the tools we are developing, we will be sharing that with, for example, federations so that they can use it later on in time. So again, methodologies, tools, approaches, all this can start, changing the game. 2 years ago, we were among the first signatories of Sports for Climate Action, an initiative of the United Nations together with the IOC. Today, there's 172 sports entities are signatories and are working on their carbon approach. And whatever we have developed for the games, we're trying to share that with everyone so that it can help accelerate their transition. So, one example of how to very concretely influence others. On a more local way, for example, we are supporting WWF France. They have a program to support sports in their ecological transition. So we're working with them in order to create tools, again, methodologies and ways for federations, for local clubs, be it professional or amateur, to actually start changing their practices and be it more and more sustainable. we anticipate that with all of these actions, our impact should be much bigger than the games themselves. And this is what we're aiming for as a legacy, for a sustainable legacy of the Olympic and Paralympic Games in Paris.
Thank you. Great examples and highlight on the carbon strategy that you are implementing. I think it's really innovative to have a carbon budget and to then use that carbon budget and not overuse the carbon budget, but to stay within that budget. I would like to turn to Jacob in terms of, what sectors are you seeing being impacted from the activities that you are performing as a City of Culture?
Yeah, so I think we're, because we're taking that approach where we are looking very holistically across the sector, across Coventry, and our creative programming, as well as kind of how we operate, is being embedded in charity and third sector organisations looking at mental health and well-being, working with homelessness and poverty, young people at risk of exploitation. We're working hyper-local with community centres and organisations across the city. And so what we're managing to do there is this kind of, I suppose, this kind of soft influence in that sense of how do you start working with the third sector, and we are seeing that benefit already in terms of bringing organisations that already have quite considerable challenges on their plate, but just having that conversation about how we can together work towards these kind of shared goals. And I think as well as what we my other colleagues on the call have mentioned about making sure your own house is in order, but it's also about being bold and setting yourself kind of out to try and be that exemplar, not just in terms of our own sector, but also so that we can influence business sector, other areas of industry to also be bold in their decision making, in their the targets that they set themselves, and how we can all kind of work together to create a more kind of integrated and inclusive society that is working towards those sustainable goals collectively. So I think in terms of absolute examples, I'd say it's definitely at the moment what we're seeing is that influence on the third sector, and hopefully as we start to ramp up towards our year of City of Culture, we'll see more around that influence on the business sector and tourism, especially where we are promoting using our green programming and our green creative program also to kind of highlight active travel and sustainable travel, which obviously is taking a little bit of a hammering in terms of COVID in the UK, particularly around public transport, but hoping that we can obviously go a lot further by the time we get to May and onwards.
Right. Yeah. So plenty of examples from all of you. My points here are really about this: walk the talk first, be bold, and set targets, and that will allow you to catalyze a transformation using the brand or using the event that also goes beyond. But it's important to have our own house in order and to be bold, and by doing that, we can really start catalyzing change more broadly. I would like to take briefly one of the questions from the chat. This is about accessibility and inclusion. How much weight are leaders in sustainability giving to accessibility and inclusion? And I would like to start with you, Georgina, as you, of course, the organizing committee for both the Olympics as well as Paralympic Games. I'm sure inclusion is a big topic for you too.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, organizing also the Paralympic Games makes us all, I think, even more aware of some specific needs, both for infrastructure, but also for mechanism of making things accessible to everyone. But in terms of accessibility, and inclusion, we like to think also of social inclusion. And this is part of what our as sustainability procurement strategy help us with, because we are targeting special sectors of the economy to take an active part in the games. So it's inclusion of all different sorts, and that it's important for us.
Yeah, thanks. And I believe, Federico, you have already mentioned also some standards on disability inclusion that you are following. Do you want to comment more on that topic?
Well, definitely, inclusion on inclusive World Cup and is a key area of our strategy, and every World Cup strategy, men's or women's World Cup strategies. This is something which, as I showed as well in the sustainability framework, this is one of the key areas that we're focusing on. When we speak about inclusivity, on one side is about making sure that the World Cup is welcoming for everyone, that everyone feels safe, everyone feels comfortable, that it's free of discrimination, free of sexism, free of racism, free of homophobia. Every single event needs to offer the opportunity for everyone, no matter in which capacity you attend the event or participate in the event, to feel safe and comfortable and be able to enjoy the World Cup under the same conditions. When it comes to disabled persons or persons with limited mobility, this is an area which is very much focused in the hot topic, or the key area of accessibility. There we distinguish between our requirements in terms of infrastructure and how we make sure that the stadiums, the transportation, the hotels are able to receive disabled fans and offer them the services that they need. And on the other hand, the services that I provided as part of the World Cup to make sure that experience is a positive one. So when it comes to ticketing, offering the right categories of tickets, we have 4 different special access ticket categories for the FIFA World Cup, which offer the possibility for fans with disabled fans with limited mobility, or with different requirements, specific requirements, access those tickets and access the World Cup with a companion. We have sensory rooms for fans with special sensory requirements. We have audio descriptive commentary systems in the stadiums, to make sure that blind and partially sighted fans have an opportunity to enjoy the World Cup from the stadium. And of course, a number of other specific services for and information provided to fans, disabled fans and fans with limited mobility accessing the World Cup. So they are very high on our priority. We understand that this is a way of making sure that our claim of football and the World Cup being for everyone are respected.
Thank you. Jacob, did you want to share anything else? You already talked about sort of inclusion of different businesses also, and also people with vulnerabilities in your program. Did you want to share any other examples in terms of accessibility and inclusion from your perspective?
I probably won't do examples. I think I won't do examples. I think probably, as the question said, around kind of lead personnel in these organisations, kind of taking on that mantle. And I think the way we're approaching it in our organisation is that we're trying to build a movement. We're not just putting on a major event or setting up, a year of City of Culture. We're actually trying to build a movement that's working towards, that very, a better society for all. And whether that is working, we've set up access forums. We've signed up to a recent Black Arts pledge called More Than a Moment. We're trying to be that kind of embody that activism and that I can't think of a word, but that kind of activism that we so desperately need across the world to kind of move towards not just a more just society, but also one where obviously hopefully climate change is combated as heavily as it needs to be.
Thank you. We're getting to the end of the session, so really amazing number of examples and comprehensive sustainability strategies that you shared today with us. Despite the impressive progress so far, we need to continue to push forward with urgency and with more action. And I believe that we can only do that if we build on each other's learning. So I would like to thank these panelists for sharing openly your learnings. And I do hope that all of you who are following this conference will be able to incorporate these learnings and also then translate them into specific goals and actions to push forward and to go beyond, using the power of sport and the power of major events to help achieve environmental sustainability impacts. Thank you very much to the panelists, and it's back to, I think, Ben for the next session. Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Hello, Nicoletta. Thank you very much to all the panelists there. Yes, you're right. I mean, you could have talked for, as usual, for much longer on such a huge topic as that. Just before we move on to the next presentation, let's have a look at the poll results. So what's the most important driver for environmental change at major events? Is it technology, regulation, or leadership? The majority, 56%, said leadership, 26% said regulation, and 18% said technology. So an interesting spread of results. So thanks very much for everybody who participated.